Similar opening statement to what we've had last couple of weeks. Looking forward to playing Saturday. Our guys are, ready to play well. We haven't played well, I think, in a while, and I think our players are excited to, have an opportunity to go out there and compete and play well against a good football team. And, as we've talked about before, I like our guys. They're practicing hard. They're working hard. They're doing the right things off the field. So I think that they are believing in what we're preaching in terms of building a culture and building a program, from the foundation up. Like anything else, when you're 18 to 22 years old, you want to see results yesterday, just like everybody does. But at the same time, I do think that they, understand, how important it is to do things the way that they're doing them. And I think that they've done a great job of buying into that aspect of building our program. So, they are, I think there's a little bit better sense of mental toughness maybe than we've had at times during the season. We talked about, I thought we were a little fragile earlier in the year. I'm not sure we're as fragile now as we were in a lot of ways. I think our guys are more confident, probably than they were, and I think believe in themselves and our program probably a little more than they did at one point. So I think that's all a positive, and I think that the fact that they have continued to buy in at a higher level, even when things haven't gone our way, I think shows again a real maturity and commitment from those kids.
Okay, questions?
Sonny, you're at the midway point, 6 games down and 6 to go. If you had to identify, say, 3 things that you really want to focus on getting your team better the next 6 games, what would those be?
Yeah, I think I want us to improve, first of all. I think that's the biggest thing. We want to improve overall as a football team. I think we've got to execute better. I think we still, offensively and defensively, still have got to execute at a higher level. I think our finish has to improve, just understanding that, from play to play individually, I've got to finish this block. I've got to stay on this block. I've got to, finish this play by running to the ball. I've got to finish this play by making the tackle. Individually and collectively, I think that's been an issue of ours at times. We haven't finished to the extent that I'd like for us to finish. And then I think understanding the things that win and lose football games, I think our guys have got to do a better job of understanding that. We got to do a better job of teaching it. By limiting penalties. We still having too many penalties. By winning the turnover margin, which we haven't done this year. By understanding that on third down, how important it is to execute on third down, whether it's offense, defense, and particularly in the red zone as well. So I think those are things. If we can get our guys to understand those situations and improve in those particular areas, then I think it'll give us a better chance to win football games.
Can you talk about the guy you're going to see this week? He's a little different than many of the quarterbacks you've played. He doesn't run. In fact, they don't run much.
Right.
And in spite of that, he's thrown for 2,500 yards. He's got 25 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. I know you didn't see him last year, but
yeah.
Can you give us your impressions?
Yeah,
of what he does?
Mannion's he's playing. I've watched tape of them last year offensively, and I think they've done a nice job of managing him. I think that they probably came away from last season and turned the ball over more than they were comfortable, and they said, hey, let's figure out a way to not let this happen. And I think he's improved, and I think they've managed him well. I think they put him in good situations and have done a nice job building the offense around him and allowing him to do what he's comfortable doing and good at doing. They throw a lot of screens. I think that's been something that, their screen game, I think, has gotten better and better. When you see last year compared to this year, whether it's tight end screens, running back screens, wide receiver screens, and I think, I think they've simplified the game. It looks like a little bit for him and I think he's improved. I think he's improved and gotten more confident. So I think the combination of those things has probably allowed him to be, much more successful and take better care of the ball.
He's still throwing the ball downfield.
Yeah, no, they throw it down the field a lot. Yeah, they throw it down the field a lot, and they generate a lot of big plays. But as I said, he's completing close to 70% of his passes, and so when a guy's doing that, he's not ripping it down the field, 30 times a game. They're throwing a lot of manageable routes, and when they do throw it down the field, they're completing those at a high percentage. And so it's a tough offense to stop. They're very diverse. Going to show you a lot of different things. They're kind of a throwback Pac-12 offense. That's has some tight ends and has some fullbacks and pretty similar to what a lot of the league was running 4 or 5 years ago. And now is the kind of an unusual offense just because everybody's gone to a spread and playing fast offense. But Mike does a really good job, with the offense. They know what they're doing. They execute well. They always put their players in a good position to be successful.
The combination with him to Cook seems, combination of Mannion to Cook seems pretty impressive so far.
Yeah, and they utilize him well. I mean, they figure out ways to get him the ball on screens. He's a good catch and run guy, and so they're going to allow him to do that and put him in some matchup situations where they put him on one ear, a guy that maybe is not a great cover guy, and then he'll get down the field as well. So they do a good job of utilizing his skill, in the short passing game, in the screen game, but also in the vertical stuff, getting it down the field.
A few weeks back, I think it was after the second game of the season, you kind of called out Deandre Coleman a little bit. What have you seen from him since then?
Yeah,
he's really improved.
Yeah, I think DeAndre's playing better. I really do. I think he's played with more effort. I think he's more comfortable in the scheme. We were asking him to do something a little different this year than what he had done in the past, and I think that was, he had some growing pains as a result of that, and I think now he's more comfortable, and I think he's playing at a higher level. We still have to generate a little bit more of a pass rush with our group up front. It's going to be important for us to do that, and not just DeAndre, all of them. And but I think he's playing much better. I think he's more comfortable. I think he's playing at a higher level.
A couple penalties on Saturday against UCLA. Are those things that, in a way, you can almost live with those because it shows that he's got some fire and he's really trying to make stuff happen?
Well, I think you can live with some of that stuff. The thing is, though, you want to make sure that you don't have penalties that are basically a lack of discipline, and so penalties are a funny thing because there's such a fine line there. You can live with them at times, again, as long as it's not a penalty that has a lot to do with discipline or a player playing lazy. Because you want to be aggressive. You want to be aggressive in everything you do, but at the same time, there's a fine line there.
Coach, you talked about Sean Mannion a little bit, but this year you've got 8 guys in the league on pace to set 3,000-yard years. The Pac-12 obviously been a great conference for quarterbacks over the years. You think this may be the best year for quarterbacks in the conference history?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's really good. I think when you look through the league, everybody's got a good quarterback. There's very few teams that are playing with inexperienced guys. I mean, a lot of these are returning starters that have produced, for a number of years. And so I think the league overall is, from the quarterback position especially, is as good as I've ever seen it. I mean, and they're just real diverse in what they do. You've got guys like Mariota that are running it and throwing it pretty well, and then you've got Mannion who's throwing it well, and you've got Hundley who's throwing it pretty well and running it well at times, and so I mean there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the league. A lot of it has to do. There's just a lot of good offenses in the league. I think the overall offensive production, in the Pac-12 is probably as good as it's ever been. And part of that has to do with, football's changing. A lot of the old records, it's almost like the steroid era in baseball, is what's going on right now in college football where, it's like comparing apples and oranges, and so, a lot of the stats are so much bigger now than they were, just because the number of plays and the spread offense, I think, has changed a lot of the ways people play football now. And we were talking about this earlier. I mean, you had Baylor a couple of weeks ago had 617 yards in the first half. In a football game. I mean, that didn't used to happen. And so it's a different age right now in college football.
You mentioned the fact that they like to throw screens a lot. UCLA did that to great effect against you last week, particularly exploiting the lack of open field tackling. That's kind of been an issue all year. How much of a concern is that?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. UCLA was more of a kind of a flare running back screen team where, these guys are a little bit more of a throw it quick wide receiver screen team. Now they're going to throw a running back screen, but it's going to be more of a slow running back screen than what UCLA did. So it's a little bit different, a little bit different scheme than what we saw last week. But, we've got to tackle better in the open field. That's been an issue for us, this year. I was pleased with the way our safeties tackled for the most part last week. I thought Demarie Drew brought a physical presence that we hadn't had at that safety position really since Avery had gotten hurt early in the year. It was good to see him doing that. And then, Cam I thought was better. Cam physically sometimes gets a little bit overwhelmed trying to tackle a big back or a big receiver or a tight end. But, he's going to learn to make those tackles, probably needs to go low. And secure the tackle because, some of those guys are big guys, and he's not a real big guy right now. I think he will be eventually, but he's not right now. So, was pleased to see him because I thought they triggered faster. Again, their running back in the flat with our outside linebackers was not a great matchup, and so we had to get some safety support, which we had at times, but then, we did miss more tackles than we need to.
Sonny, can you talk about how Nick Forbes did in coverage, and it seemed like he played some linebacker there at the end of the game, and how he felt after the game with his back?
He did play a little bit for us. He played like a guy that hadn't played in a long time. It's just trying to get him comfortable. I think that when you have a back injury, there's you have good days and you have bad days, and right now that's kind of what he's going through. Physically, I just don't know right now that we can count on him being 100%, and I don't know that he knows when he's going to be that way, or, some days he feels pretty good and some days he doesn't feel so good, and I don't know that he felt great after the game Saturday. I think looks like we've had a little bit of a setback this week. He didn't move particularly well yesterday, so, I think that's going to be a day-to-day thing.
Sonny, do you expect to have Cochran back at all this year, or have you reevaluated?
Yeah. I think we'll have Matt back in about 2 weeks, hopefully.
He's not anywhere close to practicing yet?
No, not yet.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what's going on with Daniel Lasco's shoulder? I know he's out, but
Yeah.
Is it the same one he hurt before?
No, it's not related to that injury at all. Hard to say right now. Everybody responds a little bit differently to shoulder injuries. We'll see how he progresses. I mean, I think it's really too early to tell, how quickly he's going to bounce back. I would say, probably 2 weeks at least.
There was a little segment on the drive where when Chris Adcock got hurt, I think it was you or Tony said, this is the worst thing that could happen to us. But Mark, it seems like he's doing a pretty good job. How has that change been? How do you think he's handling it? How do you think?
Yeah, Mark's actually filled in and done a good job. I mean, his snaps have been good. He knows the schemes. He knows what he's doing. He's done a good job of getting us in the right, protection and identifying the right people and doing all that kind of stuff. It's probably, he's not as effective as a blocker probably as Chris is, and I think it sometimes that's had an impact on us.
Taking a step back from what's going on the field, obviously you'd love to have Chris out there. Is it kind of good to see a guy like Mark who's waited his whole career to get a chance to play?
Sure,
now he finally gets a chance to start the rest of the season?
Yeah, no, sure it is. I mean, that's, anytime that a guy puts the time and effort into a program that he's put into the program here, you always want to see him, get some kind of reward out of it. And So it's good to see him play well. He loves Cal. He loves the football team. He loves being a student here. And, he's a model teammate and a model, citizen and a model student. So it's great. Anytime somebody like that has an opportunity and makes the most of it, I think it's a heck of a story.
Oregon State's defense has gotten a lot better since the first start of the season, especially in terms of being able to take the ball away. What do you see in their defense?
Yeah, they have. They've gotten better. I think, I think in a weird sort of way, it looks to me like they've gotten back to basics a little bit. I think early in the year, they were, probably a little bit more diverse than I'd seen them in the past, what they were doing defensively. And I think since then, looks like to me they've simplified it a little bit and gotten, they've gotten much better fundamentally. They run to the ball better, they tackle better. I think their pass rush has really gotten better, than it was early in the year, and I think they're starting to reap the benefits of that when it comes to turnovers. And anytime you're putting pressure on the quarterback, you're always more inclined to get some turnovers. And Washington State turned it over, I believe, their last 4 or 5 possessions of the ball game, and they started pressuring the quarterback a little bit, and they've done a good job of when the opportunities present themselves, they've done a nice job of getting those turnovers. Whether it's interceptions or recovering the fumble. I just think they're playing with more confidence. And I think that you can see that their players have improved. And I think that's they always do a good job coaching their players up, and you can tell that. These guys have been coached up and they're playing faster and playing better than they were.
On that subject, as it applies to Jared, how do you gauge his confidence level right now? And he's had continuing trouble sort of fumbling the ball a little bit. I mean, the interceptions happen sometimes, but I think he's had 4 or 5 fumbles now.
Yeah. I think all that's relative. I mean, I think the fumble on the goal line, he was trying to get the ball in the end zone, so you can live with something like that on 4th down. It's a little bit of a desperate attempt to try to get the ball across. I think it had been 3rd down. I don't think he would have tried to do it with the football. So you can kind of understand that and excuse that in some way. I think his confidence is actually good. I think he feels the same way that we do as coaches, that, and I think really the same way that our team feels is that, we haven't played as well as we can. And we've got to figure out a way to do that. And so I think he knows, that he can perform better, and I think, like I said, I think our team feels that way. And so.
Is he getting less time to function back there now than he did earlier in the year?
I mean, we've had some injuries up front that have, had a little bit of an impact on us. I think UCLA's got a really good pass rusher. I think that was part of what we went through last week, and we knew going in, that was going to be the best pass rush that we had played against. And so I think, he was probably hurried a little bit more in that game than he had been up to that point, and I think as a result probably felt a little bit more pressure, even when he didn't have it, than maybe he has in the past. And so, that's part of growing pains with a young quarterback.
Sonny, can you talk about the Brennan Bigelow at slot receiver experiment and how you thought that went?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a work in progress. I mean, it's just don't move a guy and he all of a sudden, he's an overnight sensation. That doesn't happen very often. He'll continue to work and get better. I mean, he's better this week than he was last week in practice, and so I think that's encouraging. And he's a talent. We want to try to figure out a way to utilize his talent, get him where he feels comfortable playing. And I think that because of the knee injuries I think he's suffered in the past, I think he's a little bit more comfortable playing in space than he is maybe carrying the football in the box. And and I think as a result, he certainly can run fast. He's certainly got some talent, and we're trying to utilize it.
Okay, any final questions for Sonny?
So when you got a player like Richard Rodgers, who, people looked at him a year ago as maybe a guy who had a future beyond college as a tight end, and then you moved him because of the way your scheme works into the slot where he was still catching the ball. Mm-hmm. Now you're playing him some as a power back. Do you ever have qualms about balancing what's obviously best for your team versus what may be best for a kid?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, so many of the tight ends now in pro football are guys that have never played football. You know, I mean, you look at the best guys in the league. You know, a lot of those guys were basketball players and you know, have developed. And I think what they're looking for is a big body that can run and catch the ball. And I think what we're doing with Richard now, you know, will probably benefit him in terms of the NFL scouts, I'm thinking, because, you know, their deal is, hey, look, we can teach a guy, you know, how to block, but, you know, there's a certain innate ability by being able to run routes, understand spacing, you know, go catch the ball, all that kind of stuff. So I think in a weird sort of way, I think it'll probably help his draft status, you know. And it'll probably hurt it in some people's eyes, but I think it'll help it in more people's eyes, just from the standpoint that he is, you know, running and playing in open field and catching the ball and you know, being pretty diverse in some of the stuff that he does, instead of just lining up on the line of scrimmage.
And the stuff where he's carrying the ball in the short yardage, that's not going to be his bread and butter, I'm sure.
No,
right?
I don't. He's not going to have 25 carries this week.
Sonny, could you talk about Demarie Drew is listed ahead of Michael Lowe, and can you talk about the impact in terms of Michael Lowe as a leader? It seems like he's kind of stepped up the last few weeks.
Yeah, you know, I think that's just that's healthy competition. That's what good football teams are built on. You know, healthy competition, and you know, whoever plays the best is going to play. You know, and Michael understands that. He's fine. He's a good team guy, and you know, if he wants to start, then you know he'll needs to play better than Demarie does. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. You know, and it's that way at every position. I mean, it's not just a safety position. I mean, it's not singling him out. I mean, Michael's done a good job playing for us. It's just, you know, we're trying to find the best 22 players.